Thanks for listening to Live Forever Young Radio. Did you know that every 4 minutes someone dies of a stroke in the U.S.? This time on the show, Bob and Rollie look at the whats and whys of strokes. They identify the different kinds of strokes, what causes them, and the symptoms and impact they can have on your long-term health. They also share what you can do to help prevent a stroke and some strategies that you can employ if you're recovering from one. So sit back, relax, and get ready to live forever young.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Live Forever Young Radio. I'm Bob Gilpatrick. I'm here with Rollie Culp.
How's it going,
Rollie,
Bob?
How are you today?
I'm doing good.
Great.
I'm feeling great. I'm
Absolutely.
ready to roll, man.
It's
almost Friday.
It's almost Friday. It's the end of September here. Getting ready for the baseball playoffs.
Oh, dude, we're getting close. I think we only got like 9 more games in the season. So.
That's it. And we're ready for the Rays to return to the World Series.
Absolutely.
And this is a reasonable expectation because here in Tampa Bay, sports teams have gotten us used to the fact that the spectacular is routine.
Absolutely. Like we say, to which whom the spectacular is routine.
That's it.
All right.
So
here we go.
So today we're going to talk about strokes.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason we are is it's one of the leading causes of death, and it's also the leading cause of long-term disability.
Yeah, you were sharing with me some numbers, but before we get into the numbers, basically when you're talking about a stroke, you're talking about a lack or a loss, in many cases, of blood flow. And a lot of the times it's to the brain, but
Yeah.
I mean, obviously we've got other things that can happen where blood doesn't get to.
Right. In the case of a stroke, there's a temporary loss of blood flow to a section of the brain,
Mm-hmm.
and it can either be ischemic, meaning there's an actual blockage that's blocked one of the arteries or capillaries, or it can actually be a burst blood vessel. But most of the time, like almost 90% of the time, it's actually an ischemic issue.
Which is like you said, a blockage, not a burst.
It's a little blood clot that has formed that has made a blockage in an artery in the brain.
Okay.
And so this results in wide range of problems, including death. Death immediately from the stroke can happen. And in fact, in the United States, once every 4 minutes, someone dies from a stroke.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And once every 40 seconds, someone has a stroke. So it's a very common thing to have happen. And
you were saying something like 800,000 a year.
Yeah.
800,000
800,000 strokes per year happen in the United States.
And you were talking about the little ones that are the clots. I think those are also known as TIAs. Is that right?
Right. So TIA is not a full-blown stroke.
It's a mini stroke.
It's a mini stroke, and the T is for transient, meaning it happens quickly and dissipates and usually doesn't leave by itself a long-term negative effect. But if you have multiple TIAs and they occur over and over again, then it can. And quite often, people that have dementia, similar to Alzheimer's disease, people can get what mimics Alzheimer's disease from having multiple TIAs, transient ischemic attacks.
Transient ischemic attacks.
Then that's a big cause of dementia. So if people have a lot of these mini strokes, right, eventually they demonstrate signs of dementia, forgetfulness, unable to focus and remember things, and just like if someone's getting Alzheimer's disease.
I've heard a lot of the people who have TIAs, a lot of times they don't even realize they happen.
No, it could be very, very slight where it happens just for a second, or it can be more like where someone would actually stumble and fall and maybe pass out, but very quickly they recover. Whereas a more severe stroke is going to possibly result in death, and it can result in more serious long-term disabilities. People can get paralyzed on one side of their body. They can lose their ability to speak. They can have a collapsing of their facial muscles, things like that. And many times people are unable to return to work or care for themselves fully, and they're dependent on other people. This is a cost to society of almost $50 billion a year.
Wow.
So,
The care for people who have strokes costs about $50 billion
and the
a year.
lost work and all that.
Oh, the loss of people. Oh, the loss of employment of employees, and I didn't even think about that.
Yep. And so what causes this, which is important to understand, is a number of different things. One is having high blood pressure. And a lot of people do have high blood pressure and they don't even know it because they never go to their doctor. Also, being overweight or obese, having diabetes is a very big contributor to it, and also excessive drinking of alcoholic beverages, and also poor sleep is a big contributor. And more now the studies are showing that stress, whether it is acute sentinel events, a death in the family, that type of thing, or it can be long-term stress over time, or a combination of both.
Wow.
And so in order for the society to avoid all this death and disability, or for an individual to say, hey, I don't want that to happen to me, right? We need to know some things about how to prevent from having a stroke.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Like we talk about almost everything. The inflammation is huge, right?
Yeah.
The more inflammation you have, the worse its problems are going to be with almost everything. But in this case, the inflammation causes a lot of the issues with circulation, I would think, because you have all that extra inflammation.
Yeah, you because of the inflammation on the inside of your arteries and the lining of the arteries, this gives rise to the plaque that can break off and cause a stroke. So probably the single most important thing you do is to reduce your inflammation. And if you look back at the causes, what's causing inflammation, number one is your diet. So people that consume too much sugar and have high blood sugar, whether it's pre-diabetes or diabetes, either type 1 or type 2, is going to cause a lot of inflammation.
Right.
The sugar, that's excess sugar that's in your bloodstream, doesn't just sit there and flow around your body. It actually bumps up against proteins that are in your blood, which are very valuable proteins.
Absolutely.
But when the sugar bumps up against them, it glycates them and renders them into toxins as opposed to useful proteins.
Right.
And throws off a molecule of superoxide, which is a very volatile free radical that causes tremendous damage in your body.
Yeah.
And so watching your blood sugar, the most important thing to do.
Yeah, I was going to say, on top of the additional sugar, the creation of the free radicals causes more and more inflammation.
Yes.
So that's why it's important to obviously be careful what you eat as far as inflammatory foods as well. We talk a lot about on other shows, processed foods and things like that. Those are full of inflammatory things, or things that can cause inflammation, not full of inflammatory things, but they're full of things that can cause inflammation and only make the problem worse. It's just kind of like we were talking about with the causes of strokes. Stress is another thing. Since we were talking, that's the main cause of a lot of what they've been finding recently. Stress is a major cause. So especially nowadays with everything that's going on in the society, we got to kind of tame that stress, and we could use things like tapping, like we've talked about before. Right, and head circles, which you can find videos on those for our YouTube on Boomers Forever Young YouTube.
Yeah, the ultimate mind calming exercise. Head circles.
Head circles.
Very important. And so, with stress, what's happening is, and this is where they've really done detailed research, is the communication between your heart and your brain. And they've done lots of studies with animals where they've purposely blocked off certain communication avenues and watched and saw what happened with strokes and inflammation. And in particular, there's a section of your brain called the amygdala, which is the seat of your brain that kind of decides if you need to be under stress or not. It decides if everything is okay or not okay. And then you have brain chemistry all throughout your body, especially in your heart, that is going to create inflammation and can lead to all different types of diseases. So knowing how to signal your amygdala so that it's not creating this cascade of problems is very important. And that we know from one of the shows that we did called Finding Your Inner Balance.
Yeah, I believe it's called How to Achieve Inner Balance.
Achieving Inner Balance,
Yep.
right? So that show could be the most important one related to preventing strokes, right? Along with information about keeping your inflammation down.
Absolutely.
So if you want to see more, go back, see the show on inflammation and see the one on inner balance.
Yep.
And these will be the two things that'll bring you along the most quickly in building a posture for yourself that can help prevent strokes. And the inner balance is very important because there's a device called Inner Balance that you can use and clip onto your ear.
Yep.
And it gives you feedback what's happening with your heart, which is very important because your heart is actually signaling your amygdala.
Right.
And letting the amygdala know, is everything okay or not okay? Your amygdala then signals your frontal cortex, which signals your heart. And in some of the research, Rollie, with rats, they were blocking the communication between the amygdala and the frontal cortex. And so when that got blocked, the frontal cortex couldn't signal the heart. Right?
Oh, man.
And so if you block the communication anywhere along the way, you create tremendous stress.
Oh, man.
But in humans, it's easy now focusing on your inner balance and learning how to focus on gratitude and also learning relaxation techniques to calm your mind, and the whole idea of an inner balance device and other stress management techniques will go a long ways towards reducing your inflammation and reducing your risk for a stroke.
Well, yeah. I mean, one of the things that when we were looking and using and showing people on that video, How to Achieve Inner Balance, is you have this thing called coherence, which is what you're trying to focus your mind on, is staying within coherence and focus your breathing. And just that alone, the focusing of the breathing can help. That's why we have the head circles. So there's plenty of things, plenty of tools that you can find, especially in our podcasts and on our YouTube channel, that can help to reduce the stress, which, like we've said kind of before, you could take all the best nutritional supplements in the world, but if you're still stressed, you're going to be sick.
Right. Yeah. And in this case, understanding that heart-brain connection is extremely important. And they've actually gone as far, Rollie, as doing studies that shows the actual size of different parts of the amygdala in people. And people that are under long-term stress, there's a section of the amygdala that deteriorates. And so people will have a smaller amygdala if they've been under constant stress. And then they're prone to anger outbursts, and they're prone to high inflammation.
Well, wow.
And so this is very important stuff too.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy when you think about that, your connection between the amygdala and the heart, which we've talked about a lot. But one of the things I was thinking is, like, so this is how we prevent having a stroke. If you've had a stroke, though, what are some of the things that you could do to recover?
Yeah, so a lot of people will go through rehab, right? And rehab is a very important part of it, where you will work with a therapist to learn to regain your speech, to learn to regain functionality of your limbs, that type of thing. But you also need to reduce your overall inflammation, because your ability to recover from a stroke is highly dependent on how inflamed your brain is. So you need to endeavor to reduce the inflammation in your brain in order to recover fully and quickly from a stroke. And so this is where people have to know which things you can consume, right? Which is the compounds that are going to reduce homocysteine, which is trimethylglycine, and also to be able to have superoxide dismutase and glutathione and vitamins, the ACE vitamins, A, C, and E, selenium, zinc, grape skin extract. These types of compounds are going to reduce that inflammation in your brain without any question. And they're also doing research now on using very mild electric stim from exogenous stim into people's brains that reduces inflammation.
Really?
Yeah. And so very, very important thing both for stroke and recovery from head injury itself, because head injuries and strokes have some similarities. And for both of those conditions, you need to reduce inflammation. And so we're lucky here that you and I can take our sprouted barley seeds and our Boomer Boost and things like ashwagandha and turmeric, all of which reduce your inflammation, but in particular, fatty acids like fish oil, right, can help reduce inflammation in the brain quite a bit.
It's great for brain health, actually. One of the best things for your brain is the omega-3s and eating very, very good fats like avocados. And, of course, you got your fish and everything like that.
There's actually a story about a very famous health consultant whose son had a severe brain injury.
Yes.
And she was able to intervene as a nutritionist and give him very large amounts of omega-3 fatty acids. And after it looked like he wasn't going to recover anymore, they started this regime, and he ended up making a full recovery.
Just by adding a lot of omega-3s.
Yeah, that's exactly. All right.
It's good for your brain.
So, and then also to be able to increase your circulation to the brain, very important.
Right.
And people can increase their circulation in a number of different ways. We have a whole show on circulation.
Yes, absolutely.
Including the use of pulsed electromagnetic fields.
Yes.
Which can come in the form of a mat that you can lie on. And there's a power supply that helps to increase your circulation.
Yeah, and one of the things that we talked about too, that obviously if you're having to rebuild your body, you need stem cells. And we had a show we did with Ann Harrison called Stem Cells Need Nutrition Too. And that talks not only about how do you have to create healthy stem cells and having the right nutrients and vitamins and minerals, which of course if you're not eating healthy, then you're not going to make really healthy stem cells. So that's why you kind of want to have all those vitamins we were talking about, the ACE vitamins, the micro and macronutrients, which Boomer Boost provides, thank gosh, and the ability to circulate the stem cells, right? Because if you make stem cells, that's great. But if you can't circulate them to where they need to go so they can morph into whatever it is, if you're recovering from a stroke, you might need whatever, And so if they can't get to the brain or they can't get to where they need to go, they're not going to do any good.
Yeah. You need to have both neurogenesis and neuroplasticity to recover from a stroke, because you need to grow some new brain cells to replace ones that have been damaged, and you also need to rewire your brain. Right, your brain is capable of morphing and changing and making new pathways to help overcome the damaged pathways. This is neuroplasticity, and it needs substrates to be able to formulate that. And
you have to make the new connections or establish the old ones, because you're now having to repair them. We were talking about this a little bit in a podcast we did called Achieving Limitless Brain Power, where we also talk about nootropics. The nootropics that can help kind of increase oxygen nutrient delivery as well, which, again, you need the oxygen and the nutrients to repair. So you got to have good circulation, and if you can do that, and you can take a supplement that helps that as well, that'll hopefully increase your ability to recover.
Absolutely. And Rollie, people can give us a call at our office, because this is a lot of information. Maybe people have special questions, and if they'd like to call us, we can walk them through and say, okay, what have you done so far? Oh, maybe there's this too that you have forgotten about or didn't know about.
Yeah, our number is 1-800-861-4609. And you can also email us if you have a question, or maybe you wanted to hear something different, a different topic. You can email us at boomerboost@boomerboost.com. and we'll get that. And if you have a suggestion or maybe have another question or anything, we'd be happy to answer that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Rollie, I think that's about it for today. And
we went over a lot of stuff for strokes.
Went really fast, but
yeah, it did seem to go
good.
Quick.
And of course, people can go back and re-listen. And I would highly encourage you to go back and listen to the other podcasts again, particularly on inflammation and managing stress and anxiety.
Yep.
And all like that. So I just want to say thanks, Rollie.
Absolutely,
for joining
Bob.
us. And thank you, everybody, for listening to and watching Live Forever Young Radio. And we'll see you on the next show.
Thanks for listening to Live Forever Young Radio. Check us out at liveforeveryoungradio.com.